My name is Esther Lynne Hargrave. I'm 86 years old, and for most of my life, I've been the kind of woman who kept her hands busy and her mouth shut. I raised 4 children, buried 2 husbands, built a home with nothing but determination, second-hand furniture, and the grit you only earn after a hard life. I wasn't always like this, sitting in a recliner that squeaks when I shift, listening to the sound of my own breath just to remind myself I'm still alive. There was a time I danced barefoot in a kitchen full of pie crusts and Elvis Presley records. But those days, they feel like Polaroids, bright but fading fast. Before we continue, please like and subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. Until recently, people called me things like sharp as a tack, and still got all her marbles. I ran the neighborhood book club until last fall. Helped the church with casseroles until the arthritis in my shoulder flared. And I still know every single state capital by heart. Just ask me. But none of that mattered once she moved in. Her name is Fallon. My daughter-in-law. Married my youngest, Clayton. She's got a smile like a pageant queen and a tongue so sweet it could rot your teeth. But behind that soft voice and pressed blouse, is cold steel. Always watching. Always calculating. And I knew, from the moment she carried her overnight bag into my home and kissed me on the cheek with lips that didn't touch my skin, I was in trouble. It started with little things. "Esther, don't forget your pills," she'd say, even though I never missed a dose in my life. "Let me handle the bills this month. I know the mail gets confusing." And then she started checking in on me, rearranging my drawers, standing in the hallway when I talked to the doctor on the phone, whispering to Clayton when they thought I was asleep. "She gets things mixed up," I overheard one night from the kitchen. "She forgot her own birthday," Fallon said, sipping her wine. "I didn't forget my birthday. I just didn't feel like celebrating it." And it wasn't until the night I caught her standing in my study, flipping through my bank statements with a flashlight, that I knew this wasn't just about control. This was about taking everything I had. The next morning the phone rang. It was Clayton. "Hey Ma. Fallon told me you got confused at the grocery store yesterday. You okay?" Confused. I hadn't been to the grocery store in days. I asked Fallon to pick up bread because my legs were stiff. But apparently, she was telling my son I wandered off and couldn't remember what I needed. That's when the whispering started. Fallon telling the neighbors I needed extra care. Talking to my granddaughter behind my back. Making appointments with elder services and insurance agents without telling me. They were trying to paint me as senile. And for a moment, I almost believed them. Until one Sunday afternoon, I walked into the kitchen and heard Fallon on the phone. "She's a sweet old thing, but she's slipping fast. By next month we'll have control of everything. The bank accounts, the house, the power of attorney. Then we'll look at assisted living." I stopped breathing. Because my voice might have been soft these days, and my steps slower. But my mind was sharper than Fallon ever imagined. And if she wanted to play dirty, play smarter. I walked back to my room that day with my heart pounding like a war drum. And I knew exactly what I needed to do. I opened the drawer in my nightstand and pulled out a little black device I hadn't used in years. Cheap voice recorder. One I used back when I transcribed town hall meetings for the library. I held it in my hands like a weapon. And in a way it was. Fallon thought she had the upper hand. She didn't know I'd been listening. She didn't know I was done being quiet. She didn't know the war had just begun. And what she really didn't know was that her fake smile was about to meet the real me. If this story gave you chills, just wait until you see what's coming. Like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any moment when Esther's plan begins to unfold and the lies start to crack wide open. The next morning, I hid the recorder inside the crocheted pocket of my robe, the one I stitched back in '92 with blue thread and prayer. Fallon didn't notice. She never did. She thought I was too far gone to pay attention, too wrapped in forgetfulness to see through her game. But I saw everything. I kept the recorder on all day, every day. I slid it under couch cushions when Fallon was on the phone, tucked it into the potted plant by the kitchen when she had visitors. I even left it in the laundry room, just in case she liked to talk to herself while folding sheets. And oh, the things I heard. I told Clayton she left the stove on. I actually turned it on myself before he came over. She didn't even notice. She forgot where she put the remote again. Or at least that's what I told the nurse when I scheduled her wellness check. If she won't go to the memory doctor, we'll bring the memory doctor to her. She still has the deed in the file cabinet, but don't worry. I've got the signature pages ready. We'll slip it in next week when she's napping. That last one made my skin crawl. The file cabinet was in my study. At least I thought it was. When I went to check that night, my heart thudded like a hammer in my chest. The lock was broken. Not shattered or obviously pried open. No, this was quiet work. Pick maybe. Manipulated. I pulled open the bottom drawer where I kept the deed to the house. My house. The one Frank and I bought in 1967 when the kids were still little and we couldn't afford carpet. I ran my fingers over the manila envelope, heart pounding, and tucked it into a different place. Safer place. Behind a loose brick in the fireplace. She wanted my house. She wanted to take me out of it and sell it from under my feet. But I wasn't going anywhere. Not yet. That evening, I made Fallon her favorite tea. The expensive green one she kept hidden in the pantry behind the bran flakes. I steeped it just the way she liked, with lemon and 2 sugars. She sat on the edge of the couch scrolling through her phone, looking like she'd just stepped out of a home design magazine. I sat across from her and smiled. "How's Clayton?" I asked. She glanced up, surprised. "He's good. Work's busy. And the kids? Also good. Ellie's in dance. Mason made honor roll." I nodded slowly. "Do you ever think about how fast time moves?" She looked at me, her smile tightening. "Sometimes. I remember when Clayton got his first tooth. He bit me and I dropped the bottle." She laughed politely, folding her phone into her lap. "That's sweet." "No," I said, my smile fading. "It hurt." She paused. For a second, her eyes searched mine. I held her gaze longer than she liked. She shifted in her seat. "I was thinking of updating my will," I said softly, watching her shoulders stiffen. "Oh," she said, suddenly alert. "Do you need help with that?" "I can find someone." "I've already called my old lawyer," I replied, watching the flicker in her eyes. Her hand twitched on the armrest. "You know, I've been recording memories," I said. "Stories, bits of the past, just for the grandkids. Little things I don't want forgotten." She forced a smile. "That's sweet." "Yes," I said. "But they're not all sweet." I let that hang in the air. Her eyes darted to the teacup, to my lap, to the doorway. And then she stood. "Well, I'll leave you to it. I've got emails to send." As she left the room, I caught the faintest expression in her eyes. Not fear. Not yet. But something close. That night, I sat by the window and listened to the recording from earlier. Her voice on the phone again. This time quieter, colder. "No, she doesn't suspect a thing. Old women are predictable. You give them tea and a blanket, and they'll follow you off a cliff." I clicked the recorder off. My hand trembled, not from weakness, but from something stronger, resolve. I had nearly a week's worth of evidence now. Conversations. Ways. Her entire plot whispered into my recorder as casually as gossip over pie. And it was time to do something with it. I contacted Marla, the daughter of my best friend, Ruthie. Marla worked at a local radio station. Had a side hobby of editing podcasts. She owed me a favor from years ago when I helped her out of a tight spot after a bad breakup. She came by the next morning with a laptop and headphones. By noon, we had Fallon's voice clipped into tidy little files, each labeled and time-stamped. "You could take this to the police," Marla said. "Or your lawyer." He nodded. "Oh, I will. But not yet. I wasn't done. I wanted my whole family to hear this. Not through whispers. Not in court. I wanted them to hear it together. In my house. Where they told each other I was confused. Where they laughed behind my back. Where Fallon smiled and handed out birthday cards like everything was fine. This year's family dinner would be one they'd never forget. If you're just as fired up as Esther, don't forget to hit that like button. Drop a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to see what happens when a grandma turns the table, with proof in her pocket. They say time heals all wounds. That's a lie. Time just teaches you how to cover them better. With polite smiles, with "I'm fine," with pushing food around your plate while your insides scream. But I was done covering up. The annual Harper family dinner had always been my pride. I used to host it every spring, ever since Frank and I first bought this house. I'd make my apple-glazed ham, honey carrots, and those yeast rolls my grandkids could never get enough of. Laughter would echo through the dining room, and even if there was tension, it was hidden behind too much gravy and too many helpings of pie. But this year was different. This year I was staging a reckoning. Fallon had no idea I'd invited the entire family myself. Clayton, Ellie, Mason, Grace, my sister-in-law Audrey, even Pastor Paul, who baptized every one of my children. The invitations were handwritten. No text, no emails. Just my old stationery and a pen that still had a little fight left in it. I wrote each one with care. "Dinner at my house. One last time. Please come. Esther." The phrase "one last time" must have rattled them. Or maybe curiosity won. Because on a rainy Sunday afternoon, the driveway filled again. One by one they showed up, holding pies and bouquets and awkward smiles. Even Fallon. She walked in like she owned the place. Like nothing was wrong. Kissed me on the cheek and said, "Mama, you look radiant." I almost laughed. She was wearing that lavender blouse she knew I hated. Too loud, too proud. But it fit her. Loud and proud was her entire language. Grace hugged me tight a little longer than usual. Her eyes searched mine, like she knew something was brewing beneath the surface. Smart girl. She always saw more than she let on. Clayton, quiet as ever, kept to the edges. Ellie and Mason sat at the table like strangers, both scrolling through their phones. Pastor Paul offered a prayer over the food. His voice calm and deep. But I didn't touch my plate. Instead I stood. And I tapped the side of my glass. They all looked up. "You all know how much I love tradition," I said, my voice steady. "And tonight, I'd like to honor a new one." Fallon smiled, raising her wine glass. "A toast." I nodded slowly. "Yes. But first." I reached under the table, pulled out a small black box, and set it down next to the centerpiece. A Bluetooth speaker. Marla had helped me trim the files. Just enough to make the message clear, but not too much. No editing tricks. Just Fallon, raw and real in her own words. Press play. Her voice came through crisp and unmistakable. "She still has the deed in the file cabinet, but don't worry. I've got the signature pages ready. We'll slip it in next week when she's napping." Fallon's face blanched. Mason looked up, confused. "Old women are predictable. You give them tea and a blanket, and they'll follow you off a cliff." The air in the room went still. Even the steam rising from the potatoes seemed to pause. "Is that you?" Grace asked, turning to Fallon. Fallon tried to laugh, but it caught in her throat. I was joking. I turned on the stove myself. Told Clayton she left it burning. If she won't go to a memory doctor, we'll bring the memory doctor to her. Audible now. Clayton dropped his fork. Ellie put her phone down. Even Pastor Paul muttered, "Lord, have mercy. Turn it off," Fallon hissed at me, her hands shaking. "I think we should hear the rest," I replied calmly. But I didn't press play again. I didn't need to. The room had already shifted. No one looked at Fallon now the way they had 10 minutes ago. The charm had cracked. The mask slipped. I folded my hands in my lap. My plate still untouched. "That's what you thought of me?" I asked, looking straight at her. Fallon opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "I was trying to help you," she whispered. "You were getting confused." I shook my head. "You tried to gaslight me. To make me doubt myself. To make the family think I was slipping so you could take my home, my legacy, and everything I worked for." The silence was unbearable. Then Grace broke it. "You knew about the fake doctor visit?" she asked Fallon. "You lied to all of us." Fallon stood, voice rising now, desperate. "She's twisting things." "I didn't twist anything," I interrupted. "You did that all on your own." I turned to Ellie and Mason. "I'm sorry you had to hear this, but I needed you to know who I am. And who I'm not." Clayton stood. "Mom." I had no idea. I looked at him. My son. The boy I raised. The man who stayed quiet too long. "I know you didn't," I said softly. "But you believed her. And you didn't ask me." He nodded. Shame in his eyes. Fallon was already gathering her things, red-faced, muttering under her breath. "I hope you're happy," she spat. "Turning everyone against me." "No," I replied, calm as ever. "You did that yourself." She stormed out. The front door slammed like thunder. No one followed her. I sat back down, picked up my fork and began to eat. Slowly. Grace sat beside me, her hand on mine. Clayton helped pass the rolls. Pastor Paul poured more tea. For the first time in years, I tasted peace with my dinner. And for the first time in forever, I was truly seen. If that moment made you want to cheer for Esther, go ahead and hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. After Fallon stormed out, the house was still. Too still. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence that comes after a storm tear through the trees, when you're not quite sure what's still standing. I sat there for a long while, chewing slowly, barely tasting the food. My hand rested on Grace's, and her thumb moved in slow, comforting circles across my knuckles. No one dared speak until the clock above the mantel struck 7. Bing, bing, bing. Then, as if the chime broke the spell, Clayton finally stood. He walked around the table, knelt beside me like he used to when he was a little boy asking for another bedtime story. "Mom," he said softly, "I owe you more than an apology." I looked at him, at the lines that life had carved deep into his face. He wasn't my baby anymore. He was a man with his own regrets. I should have asked questions. I should have listened. But I let Fallon take the wheel because I thought maybe I couldn't be enough for you on my own. My eyes welled up, not from sadness, but from the strange, aching relief of finally hearing the truth out loud. "You've always been enough," I whispered. "You just didn't know it." He hugged me then, and my bones cracked in places they hadn't been touched in years. Grace leaned in, wrapping her arms around both of us. Ellie joined. Even Mason, reluctant and awkward, hovered close. For the first time in forever, it felt like I had my family again. But I also knew it wouldn't last. Not unless I finished what I started. Fallon had done more than try to humiliate me. She had quietly filed paperwork to transfer my home deed into a joint trust she controlled. I'd found the drafts buried in her briefcase one night while pretending to nap. Pages filled with legal terms and blank signature lines. All of it forged to look like I'd approved it. But I hadn't. And now, I was ready to prove that too. The very next morning I called a lawyer. Not the slick city kind with $100 haircuts and gold cufflinks. I called Miriam Hawkins, a silver-haired woman in her early 60s, just a few towns over, who still believed in justice for the quiet ones. Miriam came by with a folder thicker than a family Bible. "I took a look at the county clerk's records, Esther," she said, flipping through printouts. "Fallon had already submitted an incomplete deed transfer. If you hadn't caught it, it would have gone through in less than a week." I clenched my fists. "But here's the good news," Miriam continued. "She filed it without your power of attorney, without your signature, and without proper witness documentation. That's fraud, plain and simple. She handed me a new set of papers, real ones. These revoke any informal authority Fallon claimed. And I've already filed an injunction with the clerk's office to freeze any changes she submitted." I stared at the black ink, the crisp edges. "Name, my house, my life, still mine." That afternoon, I had Grace drive me to the courthouse. I wasn't going to let anyone speak for me. Not anymore. When we entered the building, heads turned. The receptionist blinked as I walked up in my Sunday coat, my little recorder still in my purse. "I'm here to file an affidavit," I said. And I brought proof. By the end of the day, Fallon had been officially barred from making any legal claims regarding my estate. And a fraud investigation was quietly opened by the county registrar. Still, she didn't call. Not to apologize. Not to deny it. Not even to fight. Cowards hide when their masks fall off. But I didn't need her voice. I had something better. The community center where I used to volunteer called the following week, asking if I'd speak at their Voices of Strength event, an evening for seniors to share their stories. "I heard what you did," the woman on the phone said. "How you stood up for yourself. We think people need to hear it." First I hesitated. I wasn't a speaker. I was a baker, a mother, a porch sitter who used to spend afternoons watering her tulips and talking to squirrels like they were old friends. But then I thought maybe that was exactly why I needed to speak. Because too many women like me are written off, called confused, fragile, outdated. Too many of us carry truth like it's a shameful thing. So I agreed. When I walked into the center that Friday night, they had a microphone set up and 24 folding chairs arranged in a circle. Most of them were already filled. Gray heads, gentle eyes, hands that looked like mine. I stood in the middle and told them everything. About Fallon. About the gaslighting. About the forged papers and the voice recorder that saved me. And when I finished, they clapped. Not politely but fiercely. Because they weren't just clapping for me. They were clapping for themselves. For every time they'd been ignored, dismissed, or told their memory was failing when it wasn't. After the talk, an elderly man named Harold came up to me, tears brimming. "My daughter's been saying the same thing," he whispered. "That I don't remember. That I need help managing my bank accounts. But I do remember. I remember everything." I put my hand on his shoulder. "Then tell someone," I said. "Tell them before they try to erase you." As I left the center that night, I felt taller than I had in years. My home was safe. My voice was clear. But I wasn't finished yet. Because Fallon may have been exposed. But she still had one last trick up her sleeve. And she was about to make a move I didn't see coming. If you felt the power of Esther's stand, click that like button, drop a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. They say when someone shows you who they are, believe them. But what they don't tell you is, sometimes even after you've seen the truth, there's still one more trap waiting. Fallon wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. A week after the community center event, after the courthouse filings, after I thought it was all behind me, I received a letter. Not a call. Not an email. A thick, cream-colored envelope, placed neatly in my mailbox like a gift with a bow made of bad intentions. The return address. A law office in Nashville. One I'd never heard of. Inside was a neatly folded letter and a legal document. I unfolded it slowly, my fingers trembling more from instinct than age. The letter began. To Ms. Esther Lowell. Per our client Fallon W. Lowell, we have been instructed to initiate proceedings for a formal capacity hearing, citing concern for diminished mental faculties, undue paranoia, and inability to manage legal affairs independently. I stopped reading. My knees buckled. She was trying to declare me incompetent. Even after I'd proven everything, even after the forged deed, the fake signatures, the voice recordings, Fallon had gone and weaponized the very thing she tried to gaslight me into believing, that I was losing my mind. She wanted to drag me into court, stand me up in front of a judge, and paint me as a confused old woman ranting about conspiracies and grudges. And if she succeeded, she'd win. Because a declaration of incompetence would override everything. My ownership of the house, my financial control, even my ability to choose where I lived. It would make her my guardian. I folded the papers neatly and set them on the kitchen table. Then I stood there for a full 5 minutes, staring at the fridge, the wallpaper, the chipped edge of my grandmother's teacup on the shelf. I wasn't angry. I was calm. Because I finally understood Fallon for who she was. Not just a manipulator. Not just greedy. She was scared. Because the moment I'd found my voice, she'd lost control. And now this was desperation wrapped in a legal suit. So I made one more call. Not to Miriam, my lawyer. Not to Clayton or Grace. Well, this time I called the press. More specifically, a local investigative reporter named Alana Rhodes, who had once covered a nursing home scandal that shook the county board to its knees. Her voicemail beeped and I said, "Alana, my name is Esther Lowell. I'm 83 years old, and my daughter-in-law is trying to legally erase me. But I've got the proof, and if you've got the time, I've got a story that'll make your readers cry and rage at the same time." She called me back within 2 hours. The next morning, she came by with a recorder, a notepad, and a face full of fire. I gave her everything. The voice recordings, the court documents, the fake deed drafts, the new legal motion for mental incompetence. I even showed her the community center program with my name printed in bold next to keynote speaker. Alana asked me just one question as she was packing up. "Why are you doing this publicly, Esther?" And I said, "Because I've spent too long suffering in silence. If it happened to me, it's happening to others. And if I don't speak up now, I'm giving Fallon permission to do this to the next woman who forgets to fight back." She nodded and promised to call me before the article went live. 3 days later, my landline rang. "Esther," Alana said, "we're front page. And it's already going viral." The headline: "Grandmother Gaslight. How one woman outsmarted a family power grab and sparked a movement." Fallon's name was printed in black and white, with screenshots of the court filing and quotes from my voice recorder. The story blew up on social media. Thousands of shares. Hundreds of comments. People from all across the country sending emails, letters, and stories of their own. Women who had been dismissed, manipulated, hidden away like broken clocks. The following week, Fallon dropped the case. No apology. No call. Just silence. But I didn't need her words anymore. Because something bigger happened. The local sheriff came by with an investigator from Adult Protective Services. Not for me. For Fallon. Turns out there were others. Older clients she'd convinced to sign over their power of attorney. All for their own good, of course. The woman who tried to steal my voice had built an empire of silence. And now it was crumbling. Clayton stood by my side the day she was brought in for questioning. His jaw was tight, his hands shaking. He didn't say a word, but when it was over, he turned to me and said, "I should have seen it sooner." I squeezed his hand. "You see it now. That's what matters." It's been 5 months since then. My house is still mine. The recorder still sits on the kitchen counter, next to my sugar canister. I don't use it much anymore, but I keep it there as a reminder, not of what I went through but of what I came through. Grace comes over every Sunday now. We bake together. Sometimes Ellie joins and peels apples while pretending not to listen to our gossip. And Clayton. He's renovating the garage into a guest house, for me, he says, for if you ever want a change of scenery. But I think we both know he's just trying to make up for lost time. Fallon. She's disappeared. Moved out of town, some say. Others whisper she's negotiating a plea deal for the elder abuse charges stacking up like kindling. Either way, she's not part of this chapter anymore. And me. I'm not just a woman with a voice recorder anymore. I'm a woman who remembered she matters. who found her voice and used it. Because here's what they never tell you. When they say you're confused, don't doubt your mind. When they say your memory's going, remember your truth. When they tell others you need to be watched, watch them instead. And when they think they've taken everything, that's when you rise. Because this grandma wasn't losing her mind. She was just biding her time. And now the world knows what I always did. That truth has a voice. And mine will never be silent again. If you were moved by Esther's story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with someone who needs to remember. You are not invisible. Your voice matters. And it's never too late to rise.